Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Mystery Science Theater 3000, episode 1109, Yongary. Yongary is not a good monster movie, but it goes back to kind of the show's roots, as the show has a long history of making fun of Gamera, Godzilla, and other giant monster movies, all the way back to KTMA, and it's kind of what most people think of when they think of a movie that they're going to sit and make fun of, regardless of being respectful to kaiju or not, which I do like kaiju movies, but this is not a good one, and one that I would feel should be respected, and one that is very strange and odd, and definitely something that is ripe for making fun of for Mystery Science Theater. And I think what's interesting is in South Korea, they actually do take this film very seriously, actually. But it still feels perfect for Mystery Science Theater. It feels like almost the perfect movie. It feels like a movie that I've gone through episode guides of Mystery Science Theater many times in my life, and it feels like one where I'd be like, oh, I want to see that one, and it definitely doesn't disappoint. This is one, much like Star Crash and Avalanche, kind of in that terms of quality, where it's kind of a fun movie to watch people riff through, but then it takes some weird turns where you'll definitely remember this one. Yongary's death was ridiculous and dark, and this movie takes some weird, interesting turns in some ways, and Ichio and all those things. It's interesting how they find a way to have fun with this. It also feels like they've gotten a little more used to the riffing. I feel like there's a little more looseness to the way they riffed. It felt like they were laughing at each other, maybe like kind of getting more accustomed to it, getting a little more comfortable. It was odd because I watched this one after doing Mystery Science Theater live, Watch Out for Snakes tour, and it kind of made me appreciate the show a little more. It made me appreciate Hampton, certainly. It made me appreciate Rebecca and certainly what she's doing, both with Gypsy. I liked her Puo joke, really, that was really funny, but also like her performance as the kind of Pearl clone. Like, is that Mary Jo Peel? Very confused if that is Mary Jo Peel or not. She's so good at kind of doing that, and Hampton's very funny, and I noticed the charisma between Hampton and Baron and Jonah really works throughout this episode. I've never doubted their charisma. It feels like so automatic on this. I don't know if this is necessarily as funny as something like Star Crash or Avalanche, but like the charisma kind of makes it a little funnier. They have some pretty good jokes in this. I like Yongary is dancing. They're like kind of like, oh, like what you see here. That had me in stitches. And there are a lot of like really funny parts, even the Beastie Boys reference. It really felt like, and often this new version feels like Mystery Science Theater brought to the new age and really working as well as it does. It's interesting to note that even though this is a South Korean film, the suit was designed by the same guy who designed the Toho suits for Godzilla, Gamera, and they brought that person over to make the suit of Yongary, and the director was really unhappy about it. The suit, he really didn't like it, but they didn't like have money to redo it. It seems like there are various problems with it. In fact, actually the original South Korean version, they were really new at worldwide distribution and just gave out the original negative, and so the South Korean version doesn't exist. It's lost. So the version they have now is actually the US version. It's kind of interesting how the availability of this fell into disrepair, and on the Wikipedia it brings up there's an analysis section of this movie, and how in, you know, when you had King Kong reminded people of World War I, and Godzilla and Gamera reminded people of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and this reminded Korean audiences of the Korean War, bring up things about masculinity and femininity that are playing in this movie, and like a lot of things that I'm like, I don't know if I saw the same movie. And apparently this is pretty culturally significant in that country. They even remade it as Yongary. This is Yongary Monster from the Deep, which sounds like he's from the water, but I guess they didn't say deep water, so it's not grammatically incorrect or anything. Not that I should be giving anyone grammar lessons. Yongary is a good Mystery Science Theater episode. I don't think it's a fantastic one. You know, actually, getting into the charisma of it and what makes a good Mystery Science Theater episode, if you have good enough host segments and good enough charisma, it almost works better than it probably should if you had lesser actors there. If you didn't have Jonah, Baron, and Hampton are like really great performers in this, and having all those people in it kind of makes it more fun. And the host segments, some of them feel a little rushed. I know they shot them on the one day, and I'm not just picking on that, but the one where Jonah is talking about the various music that astronauts listen to, that one felt a little rushed. I like that Crow is like, well, what do you like? I like what you're into. That was actually pretty funny. It actually worked really well under the guise of the one shot kind of thing they're doing, and even in the Yongary Nights hotel sequence, they have the bubbles go up, and apparently, according to the Revival League podcast episode about the Jonah spoils everything thing, they combine two takes apparently when they use the bubble thing, because a lot of these host segments are done in one shot, so just one take they're putting in there, and when they do the bubbles thing, it lets them use several takes and different options, which I think is a good way to use it, I think. And they don't use it too much. I guess the bite thing didn't work out that well. I'm curious why the original take wasn't used, but it seemed to be fine. I like the Hitler coffee thing and the throwing over tiny desk thing, and even the dream journal thing at the beginning. But I especially like two things, like one, what monster would you want to be friends with, and even the push past the hurting song at the end I thought was pretty inspired. This is a good episode. It's a strange ass movie, particularly like the dancing and Icho, who even the analysis says is the real hero of the movie, which I guess sort of. Sometimes the internet, you're like, wow, so there's analysis of everything. I mean, it's a different culture, so I shouldn't be rude, but this movie, I mean, I don't... They wanted this to rival Godzilla, like the Korean Godzilla, I guess, but like, it's funny that Reptilicus was another country trying to do a monster movie. The countries that their monster movies didn't really work out, whereas Godzilla has all this meaning and is really well made, or at least Gojira is Godzilla King of Monsters. I don't know so much about that one, but this... It's like pretty bad. And the end scene where Yongary's bleeding out. And is Yongary a girl? I wasn't sure if that was like... Nobody made a period joke. Maybe that's too on the nose. But the bleeding out thing was pretty... I was like, whoa, this is getting... Sometimes the movie itself kind of overpowers my memories of a pretty decent episode. I think this is a pretty good one. It seemed like this episode sort of got to them, because anytime I've read about this episode or cast members talking about it, they talk about how hard it was to get through it and how weird this movie was and how it was bad. And so I think this one maybe got to them. Maybe that's why there's a looseness and more of a charisma, as they're all just like, let's band together and defeat Yongary, the evilness and terribleness of this deep hurting. And I think they did successfully. Yongary's a really good episode of the new Mystery Science Theater 3000 reboot, and I think I'd probably put this on the more topper tier, but I'd put a lot of other ones before it. So probably I'm 9 episodes deep at this point, and I wouldn't say it's my absolute favorite, but it's definitely an episode I would consider giving a rewatch, and I think represents what really works about this new reboot, and I think that's a good thing. And still, so far as I'm getting further and further through this season, I'm happier and happier, and I think it's an interesting odd choice, and I think they had a lot of fun making this episode and having fun with it, and I think they had some good riffs throughout. And Yongary's probably one of those that I won't soon forget just because of the bizarreness of the whole thing. So if you have seen Yongary and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.